Welcome to the Finance Marketing Podcast, a show that empowers finance professionals to market their businesses in ways that feel good and actually achieve results. I'm your host, Hillary. I've been working with folks in financial services to develop marketing strategies that work and create results-oriented marketing content since 2020. And I've learned a lot about what works in finance marketing, what doesn't work, and where financial services pros get stuck. Join us each Friday as we explore real, effective ways to market your finance business and connect with folks who truly embody your ideal clients. My conversation this week is with another returning guest, Brian Thorp, founder and CEO of Wealthtender, the industry's first SEC-compliant online review platform for financial advisors and the #1 independent find an advisor directory visited by 500,000 consumers annually. Prior to launching Wealthtender in 2019, Brian enjoyed a 22-year career with Invesco, and on a personal note, Brian and his wife call Austin, Texas home. So if you've been following the podcast for a while, you might remember Brian from his previous episode, Everything You Need to Know About Advisor Testimonials Under the SEC Marketing Rule, where he provided a really comprehensive overview of how advisors can use testimonials compliantly in their marketing. Now, that episode is still incredibly relevant, but as the regulatory landscape continues to evolve, I wanted to bring Brian back to share some important updates. So in this conversation, Brian is sharing with me some recent SEC enforcement actions related to testimonial misusage, with some firms facing penalties starting at around $60,000 for compliance violations. Now, while that might sound scary, the good news is that Brian and his team have some really exciting solutions to share so that advisors can feel really confident that they're being compliant when they're using testimonials. He's diving into Wealthtender's new Testimonial Marketing Studio, which provides customizable, compliance-ready templates for advisors to promote testimonials across their marketing channels without worrying about missing critical disclosures. And what I particularly love about this conversation is how Brian balances compliance concerns with really practical marketing strategies so that you'll walk away with some actual things to do after you listen to this episode. He shares how early adopters of Testimonial Marketing Studio are implementing regular features like Testimonial Tuesday or 5-Star Friday on social media, and they're seeing really strong engagement as a result. So for financial advisors who want to build trust with potential clients but have been hesitant to use testimonials due to compliance overwhelm, this episode offers a very clear roadmap for incorporating this powerful marketing tool into your strategy. So without further ado, let's dive in. Brian, I'm so excited to have the chance to sit down with you and talk with you again on the Finance Marketing Podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Hillary. It's great to be back.
Good. Well, last time that you came on, you really gave us kind of a high-level, broad overview about how advisors can use testimonials compliantly in their marketing, especially on their website. I don't know if you realize this, but that was almost a year ago at this point, maybe shy of a few months. So I would love to start by asking you, has anything changed since we last spoke? I think it was probably maybe in April or May of last year.
Sure. The primary thing that's changed isn't so much anything with regards to the regulations, but where we've started to now see more enforcement actions. So in September, the SEC put out enforcement actions penalizing 9 firms. I can't remember the exact total, but the smallest fine for a not very large RIA was $60,000. And so that clearly shows that they're serious about enforcing the rule that did go into effect back in 2021. And since that time, the rule really hasn't changed. They've simply put out first risk alerts, providing a little bit of that warning that they were serious about pursuing enforcement actions. And then in September, some enforcement actions specifically around how firms were misusing testimonials. And I think the next shoe to drop is going to be more specifically firms that are using online review platforms and where there may be issues there that the SEC is looking for.
Are you able to give us a little bit, like a few examples of how these firms were misusing testimonials?
Sure. Fortunately, again, I think the SEC did a nice job in the marketing rule itself of providing a lot of guidance in terms of what to do. And where we really saw their focus with the fines that they assessed in September were firms that either were looking to be a little too cute and perhaps sneak it by the SEC, or being a little bit lazy, or perhaps just an oversight. But as an example, the SEC identified firms that had specified on their website that they were a Forbes or Fortune top 12 firm, or maybe a Barron's top 12 firm when it should have been Barron's top 1200 firm. So a very big
Mhm.
difference. And if either of those were correct, you would also need to include disclosures indicating when and where that particular award or ranking was granted, along with all of the details to ensure that somebody who's reading that award or ranking has the ability to understand the merits behind it. So that's an example of, again, perhaps somebody just, a blanket oversight, or perhaps just being a little bit too slow to not follow through. But in other instances, and I think more specific to what we're talking about today, whether it's online reviews or promoting a testimonial, it's important that you disclose very prominently, specifically the SEC says clearly and prominently, whether or not that testimonial was provided by a current client of your firm, if they were compensated in any form to write that testimonial, and then if there are any conflicts of interest. And that was something else that the SEC had pointed out with several of those firms, as I recall, that they had testimonials published on their website that either didn't indicate or provide disclosures with those indications as to whether or not they were a client or compensated. And in some cases, they indicated that the testimonial was written by a client when in fact the firm, upon being requested by the SEC to provide validation of that, was unable to show that in fact that was a client. So ultimately, the SEC is looking for transparency. They're looking for disclosures. They're looking for transparency. And importantly, just ensuring that consumers are going to have a good understanding as to who wrote that testimonial or online review, what their motivations were behind it, and ensuring that firms are using those testimonials in their marketing activities appropriately.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And, one word that you used that I think is really important to come back to is, some firms maybe just got a little bit lazy with how they were using testimonials and making sure that all of their bases were covered. And I think that's so important because there is a lot to check off. There's a lot of boxes to check when you're using testimonials compliantly. And that's one thing that I love about Wealthtender is you help advisors make sure that all of those boxes are checked, so that they're not having to keep track of all of it themselves, because I think it can be a little overwhelming for advisors, is at least what I've heard.
Agreed. If you don't know the details and the particulars, it is a 400-page rule. It's a lot to digest, and that's where we've really tried to ensure that we're providing the tools and the resources to help advisors and wealth management firms get started compliantly. Fortunately, once you really distill the rule down, it's not that hard and it's pretty straightforward. So we have a great playbook with tips and resources to help advisors and firms get started. And again, we touched on it just a minute ago. It's really very much a disclosure oriented rule. So as long as you're providing the appropriate disclosures and, of course, not promoting testimonials that have prohibited language that perhaps is promissory around investment performance, there's a lot of flexibility, in my opinion, within the rule to provide firms the ability to really get started with testimonials and feel confident that they're doing so in a manner that is going to be upheld if they are brought forth under an exam or a review that they need to conduct.
Right. Well, and I know that Wealthtender just rolled out a really great new tool, and that's what I'd really like to focus on talking about today while I have you. So, can you tell us about that?
Sure. So in January of 2025, a few weeks ago, we launched Testimonial Marketing Studio, and really excited about this new feature for the very reason, again, that the SEC has provided the framework for firms to not only collect reviews and publish those reviews, but also to promote them across your marketing activities, whether it's social media or offline marketing activities as well. And importantly, the SEC says if you are going to promote a single testimonial, you need to have some additional disclosures. And so we've incorporated that into the tool, and happy to discuss that in a little bit more depth. But just in terms of backdrop as to why we launched the feature, we did see, it's still very early days with only, I think today, fewer than 10% of firms that have begun incorporating testimonials or online reviews into their marketing activities. But for those that have begun collecting reviews and publishing them on their website, we weren't seeing a lot of activity from firms taking that next step and promoting them in their marketing activities. And so what we chose to do was create this tool where similar to Canva, but think about this as Canva for financial advisors, that now if you're a marketing manager or a marketing consultant and have clients, or if you're an advisor that's more of a do-it-yourself type, you have access to Testimonial Marketing Studio, where you can now go and select any of the reviews that you've received on Wealthtender, and then choose from several different professionally designed templates, incorporate that review into a design that includes the required disclosures, and then click a button to download that and create your social media posts. And whether it's a social media post or using an image that can be incorporated into a prospect newsletter, or if you're doing seminar marketing, you could have these images and designs that include all of the appropriate disclosures, in some cases QR codes to provide a link back to a representative list of your reviews, which is another requirement that the SEC is looking for. The short story here, whether it's a billboard or a social media post, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of the ways you can incorporate testimonials into your marketing activities. And so we figured with the Testimonial Marketing Studio, where we already have a lot of the resources available, let's do our part to really make it as easy as possible for advisors, their marketing consultants, and marketing managers within just a few clicks to be able to create some really compelling marketing resources.
I think that's just so cool because, I can imagine, I mean, I'm not a designer, right? But I can imagine as a designer how challenging it would be to make sure that those often lengthy little disclosures show up on a social media image. So I think that's a really, really nice tool for advisors and their marketing consultants. And this, it actually does answer a question that both I and I think a lot of advisors have had about, is it going to look like cherry picking if I'm featuring one or two or three reviews in a social media post or an email newsletter? And so, yeah, it's just really informative to hear that is possible. You can do it compliantly. You just need those disclosures.
Exactly correct. And so to follow through with that comment, essentially what the SEC says is if you're promoting just a single testimonial, not only do you need to indicate if it was provided by a current client or not, if they were compensated or not, if they have any conflicts of interest, that you also then need to just indicate that those views shared in that single testimonial are not representative, and then provide a link to a location where somebody can read a representative list or all of the reviews that you've received as a firm. And so what we've
Mm.
done within Testimonial Marketing Studio for those designs is ensured that they always include either a QR code that links back to the advisor's Wealthtender profile page where all of the reviews are displayed, or includes a link, and it's a short link so that if somebody needs to type it in, they can do so, because the SEC doesn't specify that this needs to be a clickable link, but clearly it needs to be something that somebody could easily write into or type into a browser bar and then take them to that location, whether it's on the advisor's website or on their Wealthtender profile page, where they can read a representative list of the reviews that they've received.
Hmm. Now, you also mentioned that they can choose from design templates, right? That have these already. How easy is it for them to put in, to customize and put in their own branding and things like that?
Sure. So we're doing a few things. We've have professionally designed templates that incorporate some different seasonal themes, in which case they're whether it's St. Patrick's Day, that's going to be a little bit more green, and so less about your firm's branding and more about the season. And then others that we're looking to roll out that include both a variety of colors, as well as a little bit later this year, we'll have the ability for firms with many of the image designs to be able to update to their own branding color. And some of the
Mm.
more animated type designs, having custom colors is a little bit trickier because by definition, those animated designs already have certain color schemes that are embedded within video files that might be in the backdrop. But the goal is to have a variety of different designs, whether they're images or animated, whether they're seasonal or simply just more contemporary, or different themes that advisors could latch onto throughout the year and incorporate into their marketing efforts.
That's great. Well, since you said you rolled out in January, right? Have you heard from any advisors who have started using the Testimonial Marketing Studio about, how they're using it?
Absolutely. It's been really exciting to hear the great feedback coming from advisors and firms. And again, in this case, marketing managers as well. So that's been an exciting area beyond just the advisors that we work with, to now hear more from some of the chief marketing officers and their consultants. And what we're seeing, and what we've really encouraged with a number of advisors, is to think about how repeatedly you can incorporate testimonials now into social media. It's a great place to start, and thinking about Testimonial Tuesday or 5-Star Friday. And it's fun when I go out to LinkedIn now, I continue to see posts that I'm coming across where advisors that have subscribed to Testimonial Marketing Studio are now doing just that. They've got their Testimonial Tuesday post or their 5-Star Friday and using a design from Testimonial Marketing Studio to really create eye-catching graphics that are clearly getting engagement, because you can look at those posts and see the level of engagement that they're receiving, and that's really terrific to see.
That is really terrific to see. And that's, one thing that I was going to ask you, are those being received well by their audience? And it sounds like they absolutely are.
For sure. And I think, again, what's important, whether somebody sees that review on Wealthtender or on the advisor's website or now in their social media post or in a prospect newsletter, nurturing campaigns, there are so many places that people can now see the impact that that advisor is making in the lives of their clients. And each
Mhm.
testimonial is really a short story where a client is sharing what their experience has been. And for a prospect as well as other clients, it's really just heartwarming and reassuring to see the impact that they're making in their clients' lives. So it's creating even greater loyalty amongst current clients that are seeing those types of posts or seeing those testimonials elsewhere, and then incentivizing prospects to feel even more confident about setting up an introductory appointment if they're not yet working with that advisor.
Absolutely. One thing that comes to mind, and you may not have the answer to this, but I'm wondering if there are any compliance departments that advisors are, have to work with, and if compliance departments are totally on board with this yet or not.
Sure. So at the very core, we really focused on designing Wealthtender from the ground up with a compliance first approach. And in fact, a little bit later this week, there's a very large network of advisors, several hundred around the country, where their compliance department in their annual compliance meeting is going to be rolling out Testimonial Marketing Studios and available benefit to all of their advisors. So they've already had the
Mm.
ability to get started with online reviews through Wealthtender, actually as the exclusive online review provider for that particular network, for the very reason that they felt that we were doing and really approaching the online reviews and testimonial opportunity in a very conservative and appropriate way. And as we introduced Testimonial Marketing Studio to their compliance team, they recognized the opportunity for their advisors to take advantage of that from a marketing perspective, but also really appreciated and valued the way that we designed it to ensure compliance at its core as well.
That's great to hear. Well, I remember last time we talked, you had brought up the statistic that people tended to trust advisors less than car mechanics, right? Which is just such a shocking statistic, or study that found that. And so I just love what Wealthtender is doing and how you're making it easy, for financial advisors to show that they are having positive impacts and that they are changing people's lives and helping them, and not being swindlers, right?
Absolutely. And that's what we see with every single review that's written. We've helped advisors and firms now collect thousands of 5-star reviews, and they're just that. They're always 5-star reviews, with the exception of a couple of 4-star reviews that are still glowing, but just the type of person that doesn't give a 5-star review. And importantly, there are these incredible stories that we hear and that you read. So if you visit Wealthtender and you're reading reviews, you're learning so much about the value that advisors bring to their clients. And it's not people talking about investment performance. It's talking about
Mm.
something that they've done or multiple things they've done in the lives of their clients, whether it's helping them transition into retirement or save for their children's future. And that's, I think, what really is going to change that narrative in the mainstream media to help more people truly recognize just how valuable advisors can be.
Mm. Well, Brian, as we kind of wrap up, how can someone who's never heard of Wealthtender before, start learning about Wealthtender and what you all do, and start taking advantage of tools like Testimonial Marketing Studio?
Sure. So the easiest to do is to go to wealthtender.com/grow, where advisors can learn a little bit more about not only the benefits we've talked about today, but additional ways that we can offer digital marketing tools and services to help them get discovered. We did have about 500,000 consumers visit wealthtender.com in the last year. So beyond the tools to help advisors promote their testimonials on their website and social media. We're also providing a lot of great opportunities for advisors to get featured on Wealthtender. And so at wealthtender.com/grow, we've got a lot more information there. And of course, always happy to connect with people directly. Brian at wealthtender.com if anybody wants to reach out, and happy to always jump on a Zoom call as well.
And you're also on LinkedIn as well. Are you still on
Indeed.
LinkedIn as much as you used to be?
I'm on LinkedIn a lot. Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, I will link to all of that in the show notes. Anything else, Brian, that you just want to mention before we wrap up here?
I think the last thing is, as long as you have the compliance green light, don't be afraid to get started. We've certainly seen a number of advisors that have a bit of that imposter syndrome, that are worried, oh, what if my clients give me a negative review? And the fact is, if you're a client, if they're still a client, they love you, they've got great things to say. And in many instances, many of the advisors, when they did finally reach out, their clients said, I'll be, of course, happy to write a review for you, and surprised you didn't ask sooner. Then, of course, you see great responses coming through. So it's one of these opportunities. Again, as I mentioned earlier, fewer than 10% of advisors are taking advantage of this. Some do have restrictions from a home office perspective, but I would encourage you, if that's the case, to challenge that stance. And I'm happy to be an advocate. And certainly the SEC is intending this to be an opportunity to help consumers make more informed and educated hiring decisions, not just to make advisors better marketers. And so for that very reason, it's really beyond time for any compliance departments that haven't yet given the green light to ensure that they're now providing consumers that are looking to hire an advisor that opportunity to be able to read reviews about advisors that they're looking to hire, no matter where they work.
Well, thank you for that, Brian. I think that was such an important point to make, and really appreciate you coming back on and sharing more about the Testimonial Marketing Studio with us.
Well, thank you very much, Hillary. It's always my pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Finance Marketing Podcast. If you're eager to market your business in a way that feels good and actually gets results, sign up for the Finance Marketing Podcast newsletter in the show notes so you never miss another episode. If you liked what you heard today, please be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite listening app and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you back here next Friday.